that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy.
The ongoing feud between Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and the rest of the panel on The View and White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has reached a boiling point, exposing layers of irony, hypocrisy, and unfiltered pettiness that have turned what could have been a substantive debate into a full-blown media circus. For years, the ladies of The View have positioned themselves as arbiters of truth, quick to label Republicans as conspiracy theorists and dismiss their ideas with a wave of smug condescension. Yet, as the past couple of years have unfolded, it's become increasingly clear that their track record is riddled with missteps, misjudgments, and outright falsehoods. The irony is almost poetic. The very people who decry conspiracies have been spinning their own delusional narratives, and Karoline Leavitt has emerged as the unflinching force calling them out on it. The latest chapter in this saga erupted when Leavitt, in her role as press secretary under the Trump administration, announced a seemingly straightforward policy shift. The White House would open its doors to new media voices, including independent podcasters, provided they met specific criteria and passed Secret Service requirements. It was a move designed to diversify the press pool, bringing in fresh perspectives alongside traditional outlets. Simple enough, right? Not if you're Joy Behar. In her warped interpretation, this policy somehow morphed into a dystopian vision of Kim Kardashian waltzing into the briefing room as chief correspondent, elbowing out seasoned journalists like Bob Woodward. The leap in logic was so absurd it almost defied explanation, yet Behar ran with it, painting a picture of a White House overrun by unqualified reality TV stars. It was less a critique and more a cheap shot, a diss aimed not just at Leavitt, but at the very idea of expanding media access. Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg couldn't resist piling on. During a recent press conference, Leavitt outlined the administration's criteria for new media applicants, a process she described with cool, professional precision. But to hear Goldberg tell it, the whole thing was a laughable disaster. She mocked Leavitt's delivery as boring, sneering at her composure as if a press secretary's job is to entertain rather than inform. The disdain was palpable, dripping from every word as Goldberg and her co-hosts lounged in their echo chamber, sipping lattes and tossing out barbs without a shred of accountability. To them, Leavitt wasn't just a target, she was a punching bag, a symbol of everything they despise about the Trump administration. And yet, their attacks only underscored their own disconnect from reality. The clash reached a fever pitch when Leavitt fired back. And oh, did she deliver? In a response that was as brutal as it was calculated, she dismantled Goldberg, Behar, and the entire View panel with surgical precision. No theatrics, no fluff. Just a calm, collected takedown that left them reeling. These are conspiracy theorists in political analyst costumes, Leavitt said, her smirk practically audible as she held up a mirror to their hypocrisy. She didn't stop there. Pointing to their relentless criticism of the administration, she suggested they seek help for their obsession with tearing down anything Trump-related. It was a verbal haymaker, and it landed square on target. For once, the usually boisterous View crew went silent. No rants, no tantrums, not even a half-hearted jab. It was as if Leavitt had flipped the script so hard they didn't know how to respond. Social media, predictably, erupted. The internet turned The View into a punchline, with comments pouring in that ranged from scathing to outright brutal. Cancel The View. What a toxic bunch of people, one user wrote. The fact that they're talking about unqualified people is hilarious, another chimed in. Anyone still watching The View seriously needs to get their head checked. The backlash was relentless, and it didn't let up. For days, Goldberg and her co-hosts were roasted non-stop, their credibility taking a beating as the public piled on. It was a total disaster for them, and the online reaction made it clear. People weren't just tuning out. They were fed up, but Goldberg wasn't about to let it slide. Stung by the criticism and Leavitt's devastating clapback, she snapped. On a recent episode, fury poured out of her as she unleashed a tirade against Leavitt that was equal parts unhinged and desperate. Her hands flailed, her voice trembled, with vengeance, and her signature exasperated tone took on a new level of intensity. This wasn't a measured rebuttal. It was a meltdown, a chaotic attempt to claw back control of a narrative that had slipped through her fingers. She raged, about the White House's decision to ban the Associated Press from the Oval Office after they failed to honor the administration's renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, a move Trump framed as a bold reassertion of national identity. To Goldberg, it was fodder for mockery, another chance to paint Leavitt and the administration as absurd. But her outrage felt hollow, a performance so over the top it bordered on cartoonish. Leavitt, unfazed, hit back again. While Goldberg spiraled, stammering and doubling down on her weak arguments, Leavitt remained composed, letting her record speak for itself. She didn't just endure the attacks, she turned them into ammunition, exposing the View crew's hypocrisy with every word. They claim to stand for women's empowerment, Leavitt implied, yet they tear down any woman who doesn't fit their mold. It was a stinging rebuke, and it hit a raw nerve. Goldberg's response? More flailing, more fury, and a desperate attempt to discredit Leavitt by suggesting her success was due to gender rather than merit. It was a tired, baseless claim. One that conveniently ignored Leavitt's sharp intellect and proven competence, qualities Goldberg herself has never had to demonstrate in a high-stakes political role. The hypocrisy was glaring. For years, The View has preached about breaking barriers for women, celebrating liberal figures like Karine Jean-Pierre as trailblazers. Yet, when a conservative woman like Leavitt rises through the ranks, the narrative shifts. She's unqualified, a token, a product of favoritism rather than skill. Never mind that Leavitt has navigated the brutal world of political press with poise and precision, fielding tough questions and delivering clear answers under pressure, something the View panelists have never had to do. To them, her success isn't progress. It's a threat, a challenge to their worldview that they can't reconcile. So they mock, they sneer, they dismiss. Anything to avoid confronting the reality of her achievements. The Gulf of America controversy only fueled the fire. To the Trump administration, renaming the Gulf was a symbolic power move, a way to assert American identity in a world of shifting global dynamics. The Associated Press's refusal to adopt the change led to their exclusion from the Oval Office, in a measured response, not a blanket ban from the White House. But to hear Goldberg and Bahar tell it, you'd think it was an assault on press freedom itself. They clutched their pearls, turning a minor dispute into a grand scandal, all while ignoring the times liberal administrations have frozen out conservative outlets with nary a peep from the mainstream media. The double standard was laughable, but they pressed on, determined to make Leavitt the villain. Bahar, for her part, took it a step further, questioning the qualifications of independent podcasters and influencers, now eligible for White House credentials. Traditionally, you needed a journalism degree to be in that briefing room, she huffed, as if a piece of paper is the sole measure of competence. It was a petty jab, dripping with jealousy and a refusal to acknowledge the changing media landscape. Leavitt's criteria were clear. Meet the standards, pass the security checks, and you're in. It wasn't about lowering the bar. It was about broadening the conversation. But to Bahar, it was an affront, a sign of the rise of mediocrity. The irony? Her own show thrives on hot takes and theatrics, not rigorous journalism. If anyone's coasting on mediocrity, it's the View crew, not the podcasters they so eagerly dismiss. The fallout has been seismic. Conservative voices like Rita Panahi and Megyn Kelly have pounced, tearing into The View with unrestrained glee. Panahi called their outbursts deranged, marveling at their ability to dig deeper into absurdity with each passing episode. Kelly was equally merciless, labeling them a hot mess and questioning how they still have an audience when misinformation seems to be their stock in trade. The show's recent string of legal corrections, 4 in 1 week, only bolstered their case, painting a picture of a program more interested in pushing narratives than getting facts straight. But the real game changer came from an unexpected corner, Stephen A. Smith. Known for his left-leaning views and no-nonsense style, Smith stunned The View faithful by joining the chorus of criticism. He didn't mince words, calling out their relentless Trump bashing and their refusal to acknowledge the reality of his electoral success. The man won every swing state, Smith said, laying out the numbers. Increased support from Black, Latino, and young voters. A rightward shift in 89% of counties. That's a mandate. For Smith, a self-proclaimed supporter of truth, The View's denialism was a bridge too far. Coming from within their own ideological camp, his rebuke carried a weight that conservative critiques never could.